battle for Ringo Vinda. Republic forces are locked in heated combat with the droid armada on a massive space station that encircles an entire planet. Anakin Skywalker valiantly leads his men against the onslaught, which has lasted several rotations with neither side gaining any ground. Aided by the twin sister Jedi Masters Tipli and Tiplar, the Republic now mounts a desperate offensive to break the deadlock.
Oh, greetings, Bucketheads. Mavar Cigar. Welcome to our 221st Callously Killing Clones episode of Mandovision. I'm your host, Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small independent Star Wars podcast. We're so glad you're here. Remember, the best way to reach out to us is, of course, on social media. We are at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Please make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. How is everyone doing? Welcome back. It is a return for us to what we do when there's no new Star Wars shows to talk about. We talk about old Star Wars shows. And I'm, of course, referring to Star Wars, The Clone Wars. And we are really, really far into our run. Today we kick off Season 6. The shortened, the abbreviated, the prematurely canceled Season 6 of Star Wars The Clone Wars. We used the word callous already in the episode, but a callous victim. Or, excuse me, a victim of callousness on the part of the cruel Disney executive overlords. Once they acquired Star Wars, they promptly put an end to this series. Wrongly so. Cutting it short and making for some interesting things in sort of the canon of the show, because as we've kind of talked about over the years, especially as we kind of head towards this moment in our Star Wars canon, the stories that they didn't get to finish telling for Season 6 of Star Wars The Clone Wars have mostly made it out into the world and have become canon in different formats. This episode we'll be talking a little bit about the Maul, Son of Dathomir comic book that adapts a four episode arc that was planned for later in the season of this episode. The Dark Disciple novel that came out, I think it was a Chrissy Golden novel based on Katie Lucas's scripts to sort of put a bow on the Asajj Ventress story. Victims of the cancellation, and not to mention the planned Boba Fett versus Cad Bane episode of the show that, again, all signs point to that having happened in the canon, despite us never actually seeing it other than some animatics and some storyboards that have made its way to Star Wars conventions in the past several years. But when we saw Bane in the Book of Boba Fett a couple years ago, they speak to a history of that conflict, of that battle happening. And so a lot of stuff, just because we didn't get to see it in the animated series format has kind of made its way out there. And I think I'm forgetting one or two other stories that were planned for this season that are kind of out there and are, again, considered, at least by Dave Filoni and the people who still work on Star Wars, who are part of the show. They still consider it canon too. So it's going to be an interesting season to kind of break down and talk about. because there's, last season they really began. Season 4 is when the show, I think, really kind of achieved like a next level stride. They continued that into 5, and 6 kicks off with something really, really ambitious. And I'm really excited to talk about these episodes as we get into them, because it begins to answer the questions that we all have after seeing Revenge of the Sith for the first time. When Order 66 is issued, and those clones just mow down their Jedi generals that they've been working with side by side in these battles for multiple years now. How could the clones just do that to them? This is the beginning of that answer. And so I'm really, really excited to get into these, because you all know how much I love the Clone Army. You know how much I love the Clone Troopers in general. And so I'm very, very excited to talk about these episodes. And they're intense. This first episode in particular, is intense. Some really great action sequences, battles with the clones versus the droids on the space station that they're battling for. Ringu Vinda? And not only is the action excellent, but man, this episode is right up there with any other one for just the sheer number of dead clones on screen per capita. It's something of a horrifying episode. The younger audience members, I'm not sure how many dead clones they're capable of seeing before they freak out. But there's a lot of dead clones in this episode, and they are mowed down rather violently. And the same thing goes for Jedi General Tiplar, and it's just, holy smokes, graphic. Now, again, they do some pretty smart, pretty savvy camera angles so that we don't actually see Tiplar's death, the insane blaster to the face that she takes. But, it still hits hard. It's still quite impactful. So let's go ahead and talk about our episode. Let's do the particulars right now. This is Star Wars The Clone Wars, Season 6, Episode 1, The Unknown. Original air date, March 7th, 2014. Directed by Bosco NG. Written by Katie Lucas, who, I said it before, I'll say it again, has really crafted some fine episodes of this series. Our principal cast this week: Dee Bradley Baker is the Clone Troopers, Matt Lanter is Anakin Skywalker, Corey Burton is Count Dooku, Anna Graves as Tiplar and Tip Lee, Tom Kane is our narrator and Admiral Yularen, Matthew Wood is the battle droids, and Tim Curry as Darth Sidious. Our plot for this week's episode: Clone Trooper Tup is suffering from a severe neurological disorder that causes the death of a Jedi Master. Trying to find the motives for the assassination, Anakin escorts Tup back to Kamino for examination. That is not an accurate plot. IMDb, get your stuff together. That I disagree with several of the sentences in this, and this statement is only several sentences, so that annoys me. But that's what it says on here, and that's what we're going to go with for now, even though we, audience members, know there's some mistakes to be made there. Our Jedi fortune cookie for this week: the truth about yourself is always the hardest to accept. And with that being said, you know what time it is. It is time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Jedi. Good soldiers follow orders.
Hey, Tup!
On your right!
Tup, now!
So, as they said, and by the way, the first utterance of the phrase we've come to know so well, a good soldier follows orders. Creepy. Anyways, the episode opens up big bad base space battle. Really great stuff in this episode overall. But I love starting off on this space station battle here on Ringu Vinda. It's a really neat visual location. We get introduced to some new Jedis in Masters Tiplar and Tip Lee, twin sisters. They're Mickeyans. And if memory serves, this is like the first time we're seeing Mickeyans, right? Like I could be mistaken about that, but I believe this is the first appearance of that species. So that's pretty darn cool. They have a very unique appearance about them. One sister speaks with a Scottish accent, one with an Irish, because that's what happens in space, and we just accept it, and we're fine with it. But we also see that their clones have a nice, unique green color scheme on there, and they're led by Commander Doom, which is a nice reference to one Victor Von, the ruler of Latveria in the Marvel Comics. And I thought that was just really cool. Plus, I just like to call the Doom Unit. That's awesome. That's a really cool name. I wish we got to spend more time with Commander Doom. But, so much happens with the Clone Wars, Anyways, so that clip, as we see, it's a huge action sequence as Republic forces advance on the station. It looks like they're making good progress. You have Anakin's forces combined with Tiplar and Tipley's, and they seem to be advancing to the location so they can maybe win this battle. It sounds like it's been a long time coming. This has been a back and forth tug of war sort of event. They're squaring off against Admiral Trench, who's making his return in this episode as well. One of the more brilliant tacticians of the Separatist forces, and no stranger to Anakin Skywalker. You may remember, you see all the augmentation that he has on the left side of his face. That's from a previous encounter against Anakin and Obi-Wan. So there you go. They got a little bit of a history there, and it's not until at a certain point, let's just say, Tup takes a bump on the head. All right, and this is what begins his problems. He's not feeling right. Something feels a little off, and as we will come to find out why later. And those of us in the know, we know, but something's off, right? And it's sort of unlocking this Manchurian Candidate-esque programming in his mind now. Whenever he sees a Jedi, he gets real angry and really upset. I found it interesting that in this episode, it's when he's looking at Tiplar and Tipley in particular. When Anakin's in the room, like later on in the episode, when they're kind of questioning him in a holding cell, Anakin's in the room, and Anakin doesn't seem to trigger anything. It's Tiplar and Tipley specifically, and I don't know if that's just because, again, what we come to find out, if it's not kind of like fully engaged right now, because Anakin has been their general for so long, maybe it sort of doesn't catch that in that regard. It's hard to say, but Tiplar and Tipley are sort of the focal points of his all soldiers are good. Oh my God, good soldiers follow orders. The whole thing definitely directed at Tiplar and Tipley. We also get a lot of Fives in this episode. Fives is the one who starts off with us. He's the one who wrestles Tup to the ground after shooting Tipley, and then we get Rex a little bit later in the show. But again, like I said, the Republic forces were advancing steadily and seemed to have maybe had victory within their grasp. Once Tup executes Tipley, Anakin orders a retreat. They have to fall back. It changes everything. It throws the entire plan out of whack. And a tactician, a strategist like Trench, realizes that things weren't going his way. And so he analyzes the video. And again, it goes to some of those smart choices that Bosco NG makes as the director of this episode, to use the camera angles as Trench is watching like the hollow projections, the recordings of the battle and what exactly occurred. And again, it's just a simple shift of the camera angle so that we are at Tup's back as he executes Tipley, and we don't see it because Tup is in the way, but it's a very effective way to sort of convey that. And Trench is a little concerned here about this. This is unprecedented in his mind, so he reaches out to Count Dooku, who will reach out to Darth Sidious. And we're going to play that clip soon, but for the sake of the show's continuity, as we kind of go through it, once the Republic forces have fallen back, that's when Anakin and the clones want to question Tup about what the heck's going on. That's when he sees Tiplar, and he tries to come after her and charge after her, in a very angry fashion, and she uses the Force to push him back, hold him up against the wall. So we know something's like severely wrong with Tup. And again, I'm trying to remember my exact feelings, but 2014 was a long time ago. But knowing the films, you have to sort of connect the dots, right? They're like, okay, this has something to do with Order 66. They're telling me we're going to talk about why the clones just turn on the Jedi when Order 66 comes down. And we get into the chip, we get into the programming, but let's go ahead and talk about Sidious's. Let's have Sidious explain his level of concern after hearing Dooku's report.
My lord, I have received a report that leads me to conclude we may have encountered a grave complication with one of our assets.
Assets?
Yes, sir. A clone trooper has executed one of the Jedi generals.
And you believe this is indicative of our programming?
I do, my lord. But I cannot be certain.
It is pertinent we ascertain if this is an isolated event. A failure in this particular clone's programming. Otherwise, my plans may be ruined. Seize the clone immediately.
Yes, my master.
So the bad guys are concerned, and that's never a good thing. So Tup's about to become very, very interesting to the bad guys here. And that leads to like the next bit of big tension in the episode. Meanwhile, as Dooku and Sidious are making their preparations to attempt to recover Tup so they can figure out what the heck's going on with their clones and their programming that they've installed in them, our heroes are speculating about what could have caused this as well. And while they're off base quite a bit, I do like the speculation here because I check this out. Check this out. This is cool stuff.
You mean the enemy could have made him do this?
It's a possibility. There have been rumors that Separatists have been trying to develop an anti-clone virus. Biological warfare.
Listen, we aren't equipped for this type of situation. You'll have to be taken back to Camino. Only then will you have your answer.
So there's a lot going on there, a lot to unpack. You know, a neurovirus designed to kill clones, but at the same time, it's probably causing them to lose their minds, so they're attacking Jedi generals. It's an interesting theory, and I like the fact that they're talking about the neurovirus. It's something that was in a lot of the old EU stuff, and I couldn't remember if it had made its way into the new canon or not. Even though we speculated a lot about it in the Bad Batch, I don't think we've gotten actual confirmation that the Empire's gone that route as a way to sort of address their clone situation. But I do like the idea of them kind of talking about that now because, again, if you're like me, you're a fan of those Karen Traviss Republic Commando novels, a clone virus is it's one of the first things out of the gate in that series. So interesting stuff. Kind of just wanted to mention that because it is kind of fun to think about that being reintroduced into the canon proper, if you will. The rest of the episode is insanely action heavy from this point on, right? They're going to take Tup, put him on a ship, get him back to Camino for examination. Once that ship is a safe distance away from Ringo Vinda, the Separatists show up, and this is how they're going to initiate their plot to recover Tup for their own nefarious purposes. And they unleash buzz droids and super battle droids rocketing through space to attack these ships. It's a pretty intense action sequence. And again, sort of like that level of violence perpetuated against the clones. Awful ways to die for a lot of these clones being blown out into the vacuum of space without helmets on and things like that. It's really intense what these battle droids do as they're taking out those shuttles so they can recover Tup. What this ultimately leads to, and is once they board the shuttle, right? It's a shuttle full of clone troopers and personnel, and they're going to try and fend off these battle droids. But again, it's just carnage. It's so many dead bodies in 0G, right? Like that's one of the really cool elements of this fight is the 0G aspect of it. Something we don't see a ton of in Star Wars to this point, but it really adds a nice element. It makes it a little bit more scary in a sense because, we see the droids with their rocket packs floating through there, and we just see a lot of clones kind of tumbling around. Now, they got Magna boots, but, sometimes being that stationary target, not the best idea either. So it's really cool to kind of see some 0G combat in Star Wars. I really did enjoy that aspect of it. Anakin, they find out that the shuttle's been attacked. They don't know why. They want to know why. So they're trying to figure it out. It's like, and what they deduce is that, hey, Tup's missing. They clearly want Tup for some reason. And again, I think at this point, maybe they're thinking along the lines of, did the Separatists do something to Tup initially, right? Like, did they Manchurian candidate him? Is that what happened here? Is that what's going on? So now they got to get Tup back from the Separatist forces. And this leads to more awesome 0G stuff as we have Fives, Rex, and Anakin sneaking around the outside of the Separatist flagship, right? They want to find out what's going on, if they have Tup or not, which they do. They confirm that. And they're going to send Tup to wherever they're going to take him to. So they're going to launch a shuttle. Now it's Fives, Rex, and Anakin's turn to sneak aboard that shuttle and recover Tup. And it's just really cool stuff. I loved seeing like the space combat in this fashion. You know, we saw on the Ahsoka series, you know, Ahsoka go outside of the ship in space to engage against some starfighters. This is pretty darn cool stuff too. So I like that Ahsoka kind of went back and reincorporated some of those cool elements from Star Wars: The Clone Wars that we got to see in an animated fashion, and they're trying to bring that forward into the new shows. I think that's a really great touch because it's visually stunning in this particular episode. I am a fan. More zero-G combat, more, you know, of our heroes in their spacesuits doing cool things. I was all about it. And again, more great action sequences, more dead droids, blown up droids, ruined droids. And that's what we really, really want. But, well, no buts about it. Our heroes are able to recover Tup, and they're going to take him. More precautions are going to be put in place. Fives asks to be the one in charge of protecting Tup and making sure he gets to Kamino safely so they can figure out what the heck's going on, which gives us a chance to spend more time with Fives, one of our favorite ARC troopers of all time. So that's good stuff right there. And that's basically the episode. So like you get to have this back and forth battle for Tup. The Separatists get him. The Republic gets him back. And they're going to send him to Kamino to find out what's going on. It's by this point in the run of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, it's one of these. We know kind of how the beats work for these big arcs now, right? Like, so this beat for this episode, you know, it's setting the table, right? Like, we are just seeing like the tip of the iceberg for this big clone conspiracy, and I have to say this opening episode is more than just setting the table for things. It really kind of elevates things by not only with the intense action that they're putting on screen, but with all the potential stakes, right? Because again, as an audience, we're connecting the dots that this has something to do with Order 66. Like, Sidious has told us this is a big part of his plan, and if the clones are malfunctioning early, things are not going to go well for him. You know, so like he's got a lot on the line here. The Republic has to figure out what's going on with their army. Because again, once again, they're completely in the dark, you know, about this army that was gifted to them, and they don't really look too closely at any of the stuff going on here, which is still just a comically bad government in my opinion. But that's for a different day. But the stakes, and I think that's the real thing with this episode in particular, is the stakes couldn't be higher. For the good guys and for the bad guys, like what's happening to Tup. This is a big deal. This is what drives this arc forward, and I think it really gets season 6 off to an incredibly well thought out start. So I'm a big fan of it. I'm here for it. Give me more. You know, I love the clones, and I love kind of getting into this nitty gritty stuff and figuring out, you know, the programming, all the what's the word I want to use? Just sort of like the attention to detail that Sidious had in his plan. Because again, for like the longest time, it never really, you know, we never really understood why those clones just kind of turned on Order 66. You know, it's kind of lightly implied that, you know, they just follow orders. And so when Order 66 comes down from the Chancellor, you just listen to it. But there's much more to it than that. Because again, throughout this show, we've gotten to know the clones as individuals. And that's a really important aspect of it. We see the way they work with the Jedis, right? So, you know, when we watch Revenge of the Sith and with Kenobi and Commander Cody in particular, you're like, well, that's kind of he just turns on him in a heartbeat and just blows him away. And then, you know, that movie hints at a very strong relationship between those characters from being together throughout the Clone Wars. So, again, getting into it, show me those connections. Let's explore it all. Let's connect the dots. I'm here for every single aspect of it. And this episode is 9 buckets because we're getting into clones, we're getting into Order 66, and I love it. All right? And that's all I'm going to say about it. It's a great, great episode. It's a great first episode for a big, big arc that is going to have a profound impact on the clones moving forward and the show moving forward, too. So, we're going to get to season 7. You know what that means. Order 66 is coming. Get ready. Buckle up. All right, keep your bucket on forever. Never take it off. Be that Mandalorian, okay? All right. Oh, boy. Thank you so much for listening to the Mandovision podcast. I am your host, Nargai Tom. Thank you for the continued support of this small independent Star Wars podcast. We wouldn't be here without you guys and gals, and everything else as well. Droids, alien life forms, artificial intelligences. Hopefully not the evil kind. Reach out to us on social media. We're at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. Email the show at mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. If your podcasting platform allows it, please, please, please. Sweet 5-star reviews are a great way to support small independent shows like us, help us stand out, and not get lost in the void of space. We would truly appreciate that. All right, Buckethead Nation, go out there, be great Star Wars fans to others, recruit more Star Wars fans to our cause, and just be great people. We will be back next week for the second chapter in Season 6 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. But remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.